This is just weird. It's just weird, but I liked it. Demons are turning into spaghetti and I'm not sure what's going on. That's what I'm down for. Hello, creeps! Andy here, and today I've got a whole bunch of strange book recommendations for you little weirdos. These are books that I've read over the past, I don't know, year or so, and they're the ones that have stayed on my mind and that I feel are the strangest. They're not all horror and they're not all the most disturbing, but they are weird, and that's what they have all in common. So these aren't going to be recommendations for everybody. These are going to be very specific recommendations for very specific people, but I just wanted to kind of make a video of all the strange books that I've read. And yeah, please feel free to leave your favorite strange books down below, and I'm very excited to see what weird things you guys have read. Before we begin, I just want to let you know I'm going to be launching a Patreon. So this video we'll have a second part that will be on Patreon where I go into a little bit more detail on these books. I tell you some of the disturbing things that happen in them. I'm gonna read you some of my favorite quotes from each book and just talk a little bit more in depth about them. The Patreon is gonna be for a lot of things that I can't say over here, more discussion on extreme horror books, on erotic novels, things like that, where I can speak more freely on things. And it will also have other things too. If you guys want to see vlogs, we'll do that. I'll leave it linked down below, and then the first video should be live sometime today. We'll go into more detail about that over on Patreon. But let's talk about these strange reads. The first one I have here is Negative Space by B.R. Yeager. Still not sure how to pronounce it. But this is one of my favorite books that I've read within the past year. I can't remember if I read it this year or late last year, but what a fun read this is. This one is about 4 friends. Their names are Lou, Amir, Jill, and then the 4th one is Tyler. We don't get his perspective. We only get the previous 3 people's perspectives, but we learn a lot about Tyler through those other characters. There's this new drug on the market, and it's called Whirl, and it creates these like strings that fall out of people's eyes and mouths. There's just strings everywhere, and it makes them either hallucinate and see things that aren't there, or potentially see things that other people can't see. So when Tyler becomes kind of obsessive and taking this drug constantly, his other friends begin to worry about him. There's also some like alternate dimensional beings talked about. There's some weird timeline stuff. There's also a man who wants to learn the weight of a soul. So there's definitely some weird stuff going on in this book. But it does read quite linearly, and it's not necessarily confusing reading it straight through. This book will be for people who enjoy kind of the weird alternate dimension kind of things, and people who don't love knowing all of the answers. There's a lot of ambiguity about the book, and I think you can interpret things certain ways, certainly, but I don't think that you get all the answers. So it just kind of depends what you want. But this one was such a fun read. It was weird. It makes you feel dirty and gross reading it. They also live in this town where there's this string of suicides that are taking place, and there are these forums where people are trying to figure out what's going on. It is such an interesting book. It's also written from the perspective of those 3 characters, so it just alternates between them. So like Amir, Jill, Lou, it just goes in between them. Sometimes we get the same experience from multiple perspectives, and sometimes we only get it from one perspective. It's just such a cool read. It's one of the most unique books I've ever read. Extremely well written, extremely engaging, and yeah, one of my favorite books that I've read this year or in the past year. The next one that I have is House of Incest. This is by Anais Nin, and this one, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna read you the thing on Goodreads, or like a little bit of it, because it's hard to describe what this book is about, but this description I think does such a good job. It's a lyrical journey into the subconscious mind, and it's based on her dreams, the writer's dreams. The novel is a surrealist look within the narrator's subconscious as she attempts to distance herself from a series of all-consuming and often taboo desires she cannot bear to let go of. The incest described in the book is a metaphor, a selfish love wherein a woman can appreciate only qualities in a lover that are similar to her own. And then it says that at first the self-love seems ideal because it is attainable without fear and the risk of heartbreak, But in time, the narrator's chosen isolation and self-possessed anguish give way to a visceral nightmare from which she is unable to wake. So this one is written in a very surrealist, weird way. It's also very stream of consciousness-esque, and I don't particularly like those stories. But this one, because there's so many lines in there that are so poignant, I think it evokes a lot of emotion regardless of the structure that it's written in. So I loved this book. I thought it was so cool. I have so many highlighted lines that I'm excited to read to you in the next video. But yeah, I thought that that was such a fun read and a really interesting, yeah, use of analogy, right? Incest for loving someone that's similar to yourself so you can't get hurt by it, but then how that ends up being detrimental as well. Pretty interesting story. This one's not horror in any way. The only, I guess, like gross things that are mentioned is incest, but it's not, it is mentioned a few times, but not really. It's much more of, I think, a palatable read. It's less disturbing than a lot of these other books are, but just also weird. So yeah, if you're into more stream of consciousness-esque stuff, you want to kind of dig under the surface more, that might be a good one for you. The next one we have here is, Story of the Eye by George Bataille. This is a freaking ride. It's not a horror book, but I do think that it's disturbing enough that I think that horror readers would find enjoyment in reading this if they like pretty messed up stuff. It's about these two lovers and their just kind of erotic experiences together, and also becomes all-consuming, and kind of their descent into other things as well, like castration and murder and all sorts of things. She has an obsession with spherical objects like eggs and eyes and testicles, and some weird stuff happens in this book. It is disturbing. I think it's interesting too, but it's weird. I don't know. I'm not really sure who to recommend this to. This is one of those books where you read and you go, what the fuck is going on? So if you want a book like that, this might be for you. Next up, Paradise Rot by Jenny Haval. This is also a weird one. Our main character, I believe her name is Jo. She's in a new country going to college. All the relationships that she has with men are very surface level, detached, and pretty much just revolving around sex. There's no deeper connection there. She ends up moving in with another woman, and the house that she moves into, there are no walls, there are no boundaries. It's pretty metaphorical, the whole book. The two women build this house and it becomes almost like an ecosystem. It starts with the rotting of an apple. So there are aspects of this book that feel very fairy tale-esque, and then there are also aspects that seem to reference, you know, like Adam and Eve and the apple, and then obviously Paradise Rot, I think, is a play on Paradise Lost, which is from John Milton, which is a story about like Adam and Eve and the creation of humans and all that kind of stuff. So it does read like a fairy tale in some aspects, and it is surrealist in a lot of ways. Weird things are happening. So anyways, their house becomes kind of like this ecosystem where mold and fungus is growing and there's bugs, and it just becomes weird, and the women seem to merge into almost one being. It's a pretty interesting book. I really liked this one. I didn't catch everything, and this is one of those that I think I will have to read multiple times to really get a feel for everything that's going on in the story. But I think there's enough there to keep you entertained, to keep you thinking and questioning things. If you want something like fairy tale, surrealist-esque, and you want to read about urine, this will be one for you. Her other book, Girls Against God, is another one. I'm not going to include it fully in this one because I can't even really tell you what the plot is. It's so weird, but that's like a very surrealist, I have no idea what's happening, demons are turning into spaghetti and I'm not sure what's going on kind of story. But yeah, her writing is very interesting. Next up, Violent Faculties by Charlene Elsby. I just read this one, and this is about somebody applying for tenure at their university. It's formatted like it's their application for tenure. This is just my interpretation of it. And the name on the application is the author's name. So I'm going to refer to the main character as she because I think that's what's going on, but I could be wrong. Anyways, she's a teacher of philosophy and the department is making some cuts, some layoffs, and she is trying to prove through disturbing experiments that philosophy is very important. Sure, not maybe for monetary gain for the facility, but for understanding life. And it is such a weird read. She actually does have her PhD, the author, in philosophy. So it's very philosophical. There's a lot of reference to previous philosophers. And there are things here and there that I caught from different things that I've read or whatever in college where I was like, oh, I know what she's saying with this. But I think she does a pretty decent job of at least letting you know the vague details of what she's discussing. And even if I didn't understand everything, I still thought it was such a cool, thought-provoking read. Even in the first chapter, she abducts this woman and she's trying to figure out how much space a human body takes up, and it's just really interesting. This one is disturbing though. I'm not gonna lie. There are some things in there that I was like, oh, we're going there. Okay, which we will describe a little bit in the video on Patreon. For this one, I think that people who have a background in philosophy would actually really enjoy this. I also think it'd be interesting for people who just kind of want to learn while they're reading at the same time. I don't know. This one interested me. It was cool. I also read her other book, Hexus, which is definitely strange and does fit into this, but it is very stream of consciousness-esque, so I did like Violent Faculties more. But that one is about her just continually killing the same man over and over again. But she doesn't describe the philosophy in that one like she does in Violent Faculties, so I feel like there was more that I missed in that one. Next, we have Chuck Palahniuk's Not Forever, But For Now. Another fucking weird book, okay? But this one is dark and gross and humorous too, kind of all wrapped up into one. So it's about these two brothers, Otto and Cecil, and they're just like nepotism to the max, just gotten everything they've ever wanted for their whole lives, and all they do is they're just selfish little assholes and they just murder whoever they want. Then you have the grandfather who's trying to have them, or at least the older one, take over the family business. They also write to serial killers. They also have a tutor who puts together these sex dolls into this big monstrosity. This book is so weird. Oh, did I mention the brothers fuck each other the whole time? This is arguably the strangest Palahniuk book and one of the weirdest books that I've ever read. I did enjoy it, however. This will not be for everyone. This has, I think, his lowest rated book, honestly, on Goodreads. It's pretty low. It's like a 3. It was a 2 point something, but I actually really enjoyed it. You get to the end and he gives you a little idea of why he wrote the book, and I think you can read that and then go back and kind of connect the dots on what he meant by certain things, maybe not everything. I'm not sure who, again, this would be for. Somebody who's just down for the weirdness and is okay with connecting the dots later, and is okay with, yeah, some really disturbing murder and incest and yeah, just weird. This is just weird. It's just weird, but I liked it. The last one we have is To Be Devoured by Sarah Tantlinger. I feel like this and Paradise Rot are kind of in the same realm of books, but obviously they're different. So this is about a main character named Andy, and she's lost her parents. She's not doing very well mentally. She has a relationship with this woman named Luna, and she kind of is holding on to that like it is the only thing in life that she has. She does some things that kind of weird Luna out, and Luna starts taking a step back from their relationship, thus kind of pushing Andy further into her downward spiral. This one gets very weird too. There are a few scenes where I was like, oh, alrighty. Otherwise, very beautifully written. I enjoyed this one too. I thought it was, yeah, a pretty interesting read, and I'm really excited to read more work from her. Kind of the thing that I look for in books, really beautifully written, but also fucking weird and gross. So, yeah, that's what I'm down for. So anyways, that is a list of my weirdest books that I have read within the last year or so. Please feel free to leave a list down below of the strangest books you guys have read. Let me know how you feel about these if you've read any of them. And also I will see you over on Patreon where we dig a little bit deeper into each of these and discuss the more disturbing things. Okay, thank you for watching, and I will see you soon with another horror video. Bye guys!